Hi everyone, this is Jacqui Cooper with JCooperTravels, and I am really excited to have an associate of mine who happens to be on the West Coast, who is a phenomenal mayor and a leader in her community. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a quick second. For those that don't know about JCooperTravels, I just want to share a little bit about me and how the show started. I love to travel, and so I am definitely in the travel space, but I'm also an attorney. I'm also an educator. And I started the podcast and show so that way I could share more about the wonderful places that we can go around the world. But when COVID hit, I also realized that we travel in many ways. So we travel both personally as well as in our careers and with our personal journeys. So the J. Cooper Travels talk show brings individuals who have inspiring stories that have done great things in their own personal lives as well as traveled around the world. And I had the wonderful opportunity to interview our mayor today about her city and how quaint and charming her city is, and how really it's a hidden jewel and gem, and many people might not know about it. So I'm going to refer everyone back to the first conversation, and we're going to be having continuing conversation. So thank you so much for being here today. I want you to share a little bit about your city and who you are, because again, it is a gem of a city, and I can't wait when I get to California to do a road trip to you and meet you in person.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you again for having me back on the show in a different capacity. But in way of your introduction, my name is Rachelle Arizmendi, and I am the mayor of the city of Sierra Madre. This is my second term as mayor, but also my second term as city council. We rotate our positions there. So I think I'm on my seventh year on city council. And Sierra Madre is in Southern California. We're part of Los Angeles County and just 16 miles away from downtown Los Angeles. And we are a hidden gem, and we love being small and quaint. We like being tucked away along the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, and also that we only have 11,000 people in 3 square miles. So that's the city of Sierra Madre and myself.
And I know that one of the areas that we talked about, you have this very unusual tree that
Ah,
is very old. And I know we featured it in our last conversation. Do you want to mention that a little bit?
Sure. It's our Wisteria Vine, and it is in the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest wisteria vine in the world. And it's a one of the 7 horticultural wonders of the world, also. But it is a vine that was first planted in the late 1800s and now has over 1 million blooms. And people from all over the country and some parts of the world come to visit it because it's only open to the public once a year, and that's typically in March. And unfortunately, during COVID, we had not been able to open it up, but we're looking forward to doing that next year, and hopefully, it'll be a beautiful blossom of a wisteria vine.
And the reason why I asked is I remembered that you had said it was going to be coming up soon. And so I was curious about that. So yes. But
We know we'll have to do, we're not even doing a virtual tour, but we have many pictures online so anyone can Google it. Wisteria Vine, the city of Sierra Madre.
yep, for sure. So today we're going to be talking about your travels, and you're an avid traveler as well. And you've done the travel both for your mayor had, as well as your personal joy of going around the world. Tell me some of the places that you've been, and which is the first place that we're going to be exploring today?
So we've been all over the world, and there's still many that are on our bucket list. But we've done a lot of Europe, which we enjoy, and that's something that we've gone to multiple times. But for many of our travels, we just hit it once. So we've been to everywhere from the Asian area of Thailand and the Philippines and Hong Kong. We've been to the southern, or I should say Central America area. We've also been to different places in the Eastern European area, like the Czech Republic and Hungary. And wherever kind of we land, we don't necessarily do it in an order. We just kind of figure out what's good to travel at this time of the season. And even if it's not, and I say that because we've been in Prague and Budapest when it was -10 degrees in the middle of the winter, and it was great we didn't have to fight crowds, but it also was -10 degrees. So it just depends. We try and figure out, is it kind of an adventure type of trip that we're looking for, or do we want a relaxation where we're in Mexico or Belize and just laying by the beach, or are we going to explore and do historic types of trips? But I'd love to start with Machu Picchu and what we've done in Peru, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I haven't been there, and that is on my bucket list. So tell me more.
Well, so for that trip, we were very intentional about doing the Inca Trail. So we wanted to hike it. And there's different ways you can do it. You can do the hike, and that usually takes 4 to 5 days, depending on which group you go with. And it does have to be a guided trip. It's not something that anyone can just go explore themselves. And because they definitely track who's going through that Inca Trail. But there's also the other possibility of taking the train. And I'll share a little story about the train in a minute. But what we had done is we flew into Lima, which is the capital there, and we spent a few days just exploring. That's the more of the historical side of it, and the buildings and the squares, and enjoying the food. They're very well known for their ceviche, and their ceviche is very different from what we have here in California, which is small pieces of fish or crab. There it's very big chunks, and there's different styles, so we had to hit all of those restaurants. So that was very enjoyable. Then the next thing we did is we flew into Cusco, and the reason we planned it so you can acclimate to the elevation. And
Yeah.
I think there I think I want to say it's somewhere around 12,000 feet. And so as soon as you land, they give you the cocoa tea, and the cocoa tea is supposed to help you acclimate to it. And there's other ways you can take the cocoa, and you can also chew it, and that again helps you acclimate to the elevation. So we stayed at least 2 or 3 days there. We did a few tours. They have a sacred valley. It's very lovely. The people are lovely. What was surprised us about the food there is an Asian influence, which blew my mind, and a Chinese food influence, and they call it chow fai, is the way that they have their fried rice and their
Wow.
so we did that for a few days, and we got ready for our trek, and we actually did an Airbnb, which was very nice. And at the time, it was still kind of early for an Airbnb, but it was right in town, and very inexpensive, which is nice. One thing that, if we have time to talk about it, some of our tricks of traveling, but what we have been taught and we have definitely learned is, when the closer you are to the center of the town or the square, the more expensive food tends to be, and the further out you go, the less expensive it is. And there, you can live on for food like on $5 a day and just eat like a king or queen. So it was lovely there.
How did you pack for that trip?
Well, that was the difficult thing, is that we, as packers in general, we don't check in baggage. We are, I do a little rolly bag typically, and then a backpack. So we
That's
have
just like what I do.
yeah, because you never know
Yeah.
if you're checking baggage, but also if you have to run between airports, it makes it a lot easier, right?
Or train.
terminals. Or
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely. So the packing was difficult because it had to be for the camping site, and camping clothes are very different from going out in the evening clothes in town. So when we finally got ready for the trek, and this is, again, these are groups that are organized, and you do have what they do call a Sherpa that will take your clothes and your luggage, and they do restrict it, obviously, because you have people that are taking it, that will go ahead of you. And these are people that are from the community, the towns, the country. These are the countrymen, and they work really hard. They do this trek multiple times throughout even a month. And imagine it's a 4 night, I think is what we had. And so you have the same group there with you, and you get to know them a little bit, which is nice. But on the trek, they set up your tent site ahead of time, and so they're ahead of you. We meet our group, they take our things, and we start our first day of trek. They do offer the cocoa leaves in case you want to chew it to help you. And I'm thinking, of course I'm going to do it. Do like the locals. All the Sherpas take the cocoa leaves. It's just part of what they do. I didn't realize how it would affect me. I did get a little woozy, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is legal stuff. But that first day, I think it really helped with the elevation. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone because this is going to sound discouraging, but on day 2, I did get altitude sickness. I really was, they had to give me oxygen therapy, which is not very typical. It's usually an extreme case. But I was able to get through it. I had the choice of moving forward 10 miles that next day, or turning around, because there are no cars. There is nothing that can transport you. It is truly just trekking along. But it was great for the body. It's great for the soul. You meet great people. There are people on that trek that we have visited at other places in some of our travels. So we have stayed connected because you're with them.
Yeah.
The food was fantastic, and we just happened to have a group that was recommended to us, and they set out tables with tablecloths, and you had 3-4 course meals. It was so lovely. But so much of the scenery is really amazing. I will say, when we got to the peak, which I wish I looked it up right before I started, but it's something having to do with death and a woman. So it's like death woman's peak, something to that effect. That's when you hit the peak at 14,000 feet. And it happened to start hailing. And I'm not talking small hail. This is hail that was like as big as golf balls. And the chances of this, and you have 70 degrees during the day, then you have hail when you get to the peak. But it really just made for a very memorable experience. You don't have showers. That's not available to you on the trek. It's a trek and you're camping.
Yeah.
Tents. Again, the food was fantastic, but you don't have showers. And people brought toothbrushes. I like to think I brushed my teeth at least twice or 3 times. But the funniest part of this, in my opinion, is that right before you get to Machu Picchu, it's called going through the sun arches, I think is what it's called. And it's a trek that you start at 4 o'clock in the morning. You have headlamps on, and you are not showered. You are just ready to go through these arches. But as soon as you get through, it's this opening, it's this awakening to Machu Picchu. And so everyone's prepping for the big day, because you just spent 3-4 days trekking through the Inca trails. And when you get to the other side, it's like an awakening. It's almost like a new day is
Yeah.
how it's thought of. And you see Machu Picchu, and all of us that trekked it, we were like, we worked so hard for this. This was work. We deserve this grand gift at the end. And then we started seeing the people coming off of the train, and they just looked great. Their hair was done. They had makeup. And here's the funny thing, Jackie, what we could tell, they smelled good. We didn't know. Right? So we're like the train people, and I have a lot of friends that have taken the train, but I like to do it in jest. We give them a hard time because like they didn't earn it, but it's however anyone decides, if and when you decide to do it, whether it's the train or the trail. The view of Machu Picchu is just absolutely breathtaking, and it is something that you're seeing these large stones that were put together without mortar. And they were just put together, and they've been around for centuries. And how that happens is just amazing. And there's something I think sacred about just being there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, and so after the experience of Machu Picchu, of course, we had to get a fancy hotel and shower, and we did take the train back. But it really is One, as much as I had to get oxygen treatment twice, I was throwing up, I was sick, I couldn't eat, they had to force me to drink water. And people ask, would you do it again? I'm like, absolutely, in a heartbeat. So that was just one of my favorite travel experiences, very different from others. But I definitely want to encourage folks to consider it. At one point, they were saying they were thinking of closing down the Inca Trail because there were too many people on it. I'm not sure if that was like kind of a press to say, come on in and visit us. But it sold us, and we made sure we did it. But I'm here. I'm excited to hear, Jackie. It's something that you want to do.
I definitely want to do it. And I understand why some of these special sites they're looking at closing only because, or at least restricting, just because with modern transportation, it becomes a lot easier for more groups of people to get to certain places. And as long as I know you and everyone who was in your group was very respectful, but there are some travelers who are not always respectful of the environment. And that's the challenge is we always have to think, let's keep the places that we are so amazed about their beauty so pristine. So that way the next group of children who are growing up can see the same beauty. So
Absolutely. It's the same concept of when if we're camping here in any of our national parks or in parks, whatever you bring in, you take out. I say that there's things that are biodegradable, but we're very intentional, and our guides are very intentional about ensuring that this is a respected sacred place, and we want to be able to celebrate it as long as we can and enjoy it. And part of that means we leave the least amount of trace of our human bodies there, and or I should say our existence there. So yes, you're right.
yeah, for sure. So I know you mentioned that you've been to Croatia and you've been to Portugal as well. Where do you want to hop us to the next place in your journey?
We can start over in Portugal, and we've taken a couple of trips there, and our first one was, and this tends to be most of the places that we travel to, is that we go to the most I don't say touristy, but either the capitals or places that people tend to visit, because we want to hit the spots that and make sure that we have experienced it, and we determine whether we should go back or not, and if and when we'll return. So our first trip involved going to Lisbon and to Porto, and there's a few things that stand out about Portugal to me. Is one is the food, and the food is just so fresh and so simple. There's nothing fancy about it. There's not all these fancy garnishes on it. When you can stop at one of the restaurants and just have a grilled fish, and it's a fish. It's got the head, it's got the tail, and that's all it is. It just probably was caught earlier that day, and the people are very lovely. The history in Portugal is a little sad, and so when you're hearing the music and the soul of the people, it's been a place where people have gone through so much hardship, but you see that through their art, and it's but they're also very welcoming people. Portuguese is very difficult to speak, but again, one of the tips that I'll just kind of thread it throughout,
Yeah.
that I hope everyone just naturally does, is just learning at least one, two, or three phrases for every place that you visit, and I think thank you is just the most important. If you can't remember anything else, is how you say thank you in the language, and hello and good morning or good evening. But yes, the people there were very lovely. What's nice about Lisbon is that there's a lot of short trips that you can take. Public transportation is something that I always encourage people to do. Also, my husband and I are very big on. Um, it's part of the experience, I think,
Yeah.
is going through the public transportation. It's an inexpensive way typically of how to get around, but it's a way of meeting people. You're seeing how their daily lives are. And Lisbon makes it very easy to do that, as do a lot of your capital cities and your very metropolitan cities. But day trips are very, very easy there. We also hit some Sintra and Cascais is our two towns that are around there. I think there was one that was a topless beach, which we knew that going in, and you're kind of thinking when in Rome, maybe not, but I won't share whether we did or not, but it was an experience of being there. And then we flew over to Porto, which is where port comes from. And if anyone enjoys wine tasting here in the US or in California, which we love to do, port tasting is something definitely to enjoy there. And it's a slower type of city than especially when you think it's a metropolitan city. But I think everything's a little bit slower than when you're from California and Los Angeles. But that's the beauty of traveling and being able to appreciate that there. The second trip we did to Portugal was to the Azores. And there
Yeah.
are islands outside, and not everyone knows it. And it's this secret that we just happily discovered because a friend was visiting. And what we joke about is you don't invite the Arizmendis on a trip because we actually show up and we go. So don't joke about it because we will be there. And this some friends that we were out to dinner and they're like, hey, we're going to the Azores in a couple of months. Have you heard of it? No, never heard of it. They're islands outside of Portugal. Do you want to come with us? I have family there. Sure.
Sure.
And showed up. They have, so the Azores, they're connected by ferries, and that's one way you can take it. There are some major airports that are there. But the one way that I thought about the Azores is the same way I think about Hawaii. And Hawaii people are Hawaiians first before they are United States citizens, or Americans, however they want to think about it. They're Azorians first, and then maybe Portugal second. And I think a lot of times people don't even connect the two because they're so separate. But I have learned that the Azores has been getting a lot more attention lately, and there's tourism was up pre-pandemic and pre-COVID. So I'm sure it will continue, but it's still very affordable. Food is fantastic, easy to get around again with the ferries and going to any of the main places, but definitely would add that on a list of anyone that's looking to travel somewhere. A little bit different, but easy to get to. From Boston, you can get there in 4 hours.
That's true. That's very true. And I've only heard great things about it as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So where else do you want to take us? And also, I know that you have different travel tips that you would like to share as well.
Yeah. So, I'll just mention Croatia just because, or I was thinking about Colombia because we really
Yeah,
enjoyed
sure.
that one was recently, but I'll just say a couple things about both. In Colombia, I think we did both Bogota, which is their capital, very city, very compact. And then we went out to Cartagena, which is more of the resort town that has the walled-in city. And if you ever seen pictures of Colombia, it's probably Cartagena that you're seeing because it has all of the beautiful colored doors. And if I had
Yes.
prepped for this a little bit more, I was like, oh, I'd love to have photos for you to add them in. But there is definitely the Bahamas feel there, and it definitely has that influence where you don't see that in Bogota. So you can be in the same country and have it feels influences of different places.
Why do you think that they painted the doors? What made them decide to do this?
I should know that, and that's why I was even thinking, like, I need to prepare for Jacqui when I'm speaking to. So I'm going to get back to you on that. Maybe you can just add those on the notes.
We'll definitely do it. And we're going to be doing continuing conversations. There are going to be other travels that we both will be doing. So
good. And I'm going to find that answer as soon as I get off this call with you. And then I'll just briefly speak about Croatia. Croatia, for those who can't picture the map, is very close to Turkey and has a lot of Soviet, or I should say Russia influence there too. And it's a very small country, but it received a lot of attention because of Game of Thrones. And I think even before Game of Thrones, it was the resort party kind of place where there's islands that people hop. around in, but as soon as Game of Thrones came, it just became this place that a lot of people go to. But Zagreb is the capital, and we tend to travel, as I told you, about Prague and Budapest during wintertime, and we usually do a spring trip. But we went there in wintertime, and their Christmas markets are unlike anything I've seen anywhere. And we've been quite a few places in Europe, and Christmas markets are a very big thing. But there was something special about Zagreb because they were popped up all throughout the city and they're very close by. And, you know, thousands of people were out every day, every afternoon. And if someone ever feels like they have lost the Christmas spirit, you go there during this time and it's magical. It truly is. So we enjoyed that. Then we headed over to Split, which is more of a resort area, and then we went over to Dubrovnik, where again, like Game of Thrones, it's got the wall that you walk along the edges, and just the history that's there. It really is an amazing place. We actually brought in New Year's there. I think maybe that was 2019, and it was the families come out because this is the time of, and winter is not the time the tourists come out whatsoever. During the summertime, it's crowded, it's expensive, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but it's hard to get around because it's very small. Wintertime, it really is more about family, and we just had such an enjoyable time. I wish my husband had watched Game of Thrones. He could probably appreciate it a lot more, but I'm like, oh, there's this and there's this. So definitely another place that hope people can get to. And in the way that we think about where we want to go is I think I referred to it earlier, is that, do we want a relaxing type of place? Do we want to walk around? Do we want to learn about history? Do we want to see museums? And we don't always get it in the order we're thinking of it, but it's once you're there, you embrace wherever you're at. And that some things that I was going to share in some of our tips is that we usually download. You can do offline maps now, which is magic. I mean, that was something that was not around back in our day. We really had to open up the maps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But almost every place has walking tours that you can download also. And, if you are able and you can, it's a really great way to get a feel of the city. And not to say that the hop on and off buses, you can't do that, and you can, but there's something a little bit different when you're able to walk and stop and appreciate, sit on a bench and just see people walking by. I think is part of the experience. We always stock up on the local markets. I am very big on, I think I was telling you, Jackie, that I'm a dietitian by education, but I love snacks, and I love finding out what the snacks are for every place, like, ketchup, potato chips, or whatever the case may be. But finding wherever the local markets are, we always bring our own water bottles so we can fill them up. And a lot of the airports now too, you can just refill your bottle as opposed to buying them. And much better for the environment also.
Yeah,
but we usually stock up at the local markets, but you get to also feel for what are the snacks, what are some of the treats that are part of everyday life of what people are eating. And also too, it can get rather pricey depending if you're traveling on a budget. Eating out every single day is can be rather expensive. And I'll just throw in Bangkok really quickly. I think our best meals were just on the street, sitting on a milk carton and a rackety table, but fantastic food with beer and very inexpensive. And I remember one time we were in Bangkok and we were at a restaurant and we were eating food and we're like, it's okay, but I'd much rather be out there in the street eating it. So knowing where the locals go, knowing what the locals are eating, I think is part of the experience. I talked about public transportation and being able to experience that too. But I think for many travelers, these are tricks that we all kind of know and that we all make sure we do. But it's not always common knowledge for a lot of folks. So I just wanted to share a few of those.
Yeah, no, I love all those things because sometimes when we're planning a trip, I know it's taken me a long time to learn how to just do backpack and a rollie. While on the flip side, when I go to visit family here in the country, I might bring a larger suitcase. So it's like when you're traveling overseas, it's like, okay. And then my daughter and I, one trip, we left the backpack or the suitcase empty because what we decided we were going to do is we were going to buy clothes on the road. So we bought t-shirts, which were our souvenirs, every place we went. And those were the clothes for the next day.
That's perfect.
So yeah, so that way we knew that we had a minimum amount of clothes that if for some reason we didn't find something that we could at least wear, but we knew that our goal every day was to buy something that we would then enjoy when we got home as well.
I think that's a great tip.
Yeah. So this has been so much fun talking about travel. I know we're going to all be going traveling soon, but in the meantime, it's nice to take the down memory lane. And I know that we're going to have other conversations about, trips to Asia and other places around the world. So any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
No, but I do appreciate you reaching out again to talk about. This is not something that I feel like I get to talk about much. And it is a lot of fun reminiscing about that, but also planning for what the next chapter is going to look like.
Yeah. And I think that, for all of us, there is going to be a next chapter of travel, whether it means that we have to travel with 5 masks, we'll be traveling, with our COVID passport on our phone, but, we're all going to be moving around and, and being able to meet new people and experience, the wonders of the world, because I think that's one of the things that COVID has shown us is that we are a very small global community.
Yeah.
And we're so interconnected. And because of that, I think that that's another reason why we need to get out and meet more people and connect with more people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So anyway, thank you so much for being on. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Jackie.